a broke mechanic, a billionaire groom, a ruined wedding that wasn't even his. Cassie Vaughn was just trying to make rent when she accidentally crashed the wrong ceremony, claiming she was pregnant with a stranger's child. But instead of being thrown out, she was dragged into a fake marriage with Damian Blackwood, the cold, powerful heir who saw her as his perfect escape. What began as a lie turned into passion, heartbreak, and a love neither of them saw coming. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below. And don't forget to subscribe to hear the full roller coaster of their unforgettable story. Cassie Vaughn tightened her grip on the wrench in her hand, the cool metal pressing into her calloused palm like a cruel reminder of reality. She stood in front of the now boarded up garage she'd called her second home for the past 3 years. The closed indefinitely sign was hastily taped across the windows, fluttering with the morning breeze like it was mocking her. She exhaled through her nose, eyes narrowing behind smudged safety goggles, as if she could will the building to reopen. But no amount of glaring could reverse the bankruptcy, or the fact that she hadn't been paid in weeks. "Where on earth am I going to find another quick gig?" she muttered, slinging her tool bag over her shoulder with a grunt. The strap dug into her shoulder, but Cassie barely noticed. Her boots crunched against the pavement as she walked, aimlessly at first, letting her frustration guide her steps. She'd made peace a long time ago with the fact that life never handed her anything easy. The summer sun was already creeping up behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. As Cassie walked past rows of cars and convenience stores, she kept replaying her dwindling bank account in her head. Rent was due in a week, and she barely had enough for gas. She had a couple of job applications pending, but mechanics like her didn't get much attention without fancy certifications, or a last name that meant something. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the sleek black car idling along the street until a sharp female voice called out, "Ms.
Hey, Miss!"
Cassie glanced up, squinting at the tinted windows. The car rolled slowly beside her, but she kept walking. Probably just another rich woman who needed directions to a nail salon. The driver door swung open, and out stepped a tall, elegant woman in a beige designer coat and heels far too expensive for pavement. She jogged ahead and stopped directly in Cassie's path, blocking her way like some sort of urgent apparition. Startled, Cassie paused. "Can I help you? Did your car break down or something?" she asked, eyeing the luxury vehicle behind the woman. The woman shook her head quickly. No, it's not that." "Then step aside." "I've got somewhere to be," Cassie said, with a half lie, adjusting the weight of her bag and ready to move around her. "Wait, please." "I need your help," the woman said, desperation flickering in her hazel eyes. "It's urgent, and I'm willing to pay you $100,000. Cassie blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" $100,000, just for one task. "Please," she repeated, her voice nearly trembling. Cassie narrowed her eyes, scanning the stranger's perfectly groomed face for any sign of a joke. "That's a lot of money. What kind of help are we talking about here? You trying to launder it or something?" "No," the woman said quickly, glancing around like someone might be listening. "Please, can we talk in my car? It's not something I can say out here." Cassie hesitated. Every survival instinct in her body screamed no. But the words $100,000 echoed louder. She didn't have much to lose, except maybe her pride. She nodded once. "All right, I'm listening. But if this turns out to be something shady, I'm walking." They climbed into the car, the cool air conditioning a welcome contrast to the heat outside. The woman leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly, My name is Evelyn, and I need you to stop a wedding. Tomorrow morning. Cassie blinked again, eyebrows raised. I'm sorry. What? A wedding? Why can't you stop it? Aren't you the girlfriend? I can't be seen there. They can't know I'm involved. Evelyn's voice cracked. I'm pregnant. With the groom's child. But he's being forced to marry someone else. Cassie stared, processing. Please, Evelyn begged, help me stop it. Help me and my baby. Cassie leaned back, staring at the ceiling of the car. This was madness. Ridiculous. Dramatic. But it was also $100,000. And she'd been broke long enough to consider desperate things. All right, she finally said. I'll do it. The morning sky was streaked with lavender and gold when Cassie parked her borrowed scooter a block away from the massive cathedral. It was the kind of building where fairy tale weddings took place. Not the kind of place someone like her would ever be invited to. Especially not as a saboteur. She pulled her cap low over her forehead and double-checked the address Evelyn had sent her. The time was set, 9:00 a.m. Sharp. She had 15 minutes to wreck a wedding that, according to Evelyn, was built on lies and coercion. Cassie paced behind a row of parked cars, her heart hammering. What the hell was she doing? She wasn't some soap opera villain. She fixed carburetors, not relationships. And yet, here she was, sweaty palms clinging to her phone, waiting for the right moment to deliver a line straight out of a melodrama. Just walk in, shout the line, and leave, Cassie told herself. A text buzzed through her phone. Are you in position? Cassie replied quickly, yeah. Just say when. Now, it's happening. You've got this. Thank you. She inhaled sharply, then exhaled through clenched teeth. With a deep breath, Cassie darted toward the church entrance and slipped into the grand hall. The air was thick with perfume, florals, and expensive cologne. Rows of elegantly dressed guests filled every pew, and the groom stood at the altar, tall and handsome in a custom-fit tux. The bride was only a few steps away, her white veil floating like mist as she walked the aisle to dramatic string music. Cassie took 2 steps forward before the priest's voice rang out. If there is anyone here who objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. This was her cue. Cassie's voice shot out like a cannon blast. Stop the wedding. Her words echoed through the vast hall, bouncing off the vaulted ceilings and crashing into stunned gasps. The music screeched to a halt. Every head turned toward her. Cassie felt like her soul tried to leap out of her body and run far, far away. Still, she forced herself to walk forward, hands trembling, face pale, but expression firm. The bride froze at the altar. "Who is she?" she asked, turning to the groom. "Damien, don't tell me! This woman? Is this real? Are you cheating on me already? We're not even married yet!" Cassie blinked, momentarily paralyzed. Damien. That name wasn't right. Had she? Still, she couldn't back out now. The bride was already spiraling, and everyone was watching. She had to commit. "I'm pregnant," Cassie announced, laying a hand on her flat stomach. 1 month. A wave of whispers rolled through the pews like a tide. What? The bride turned to Damien, eyes wide with horror. Damien looked equally stunned. "I don't know her." "You're pretending not to know me now?" Cassie said dramatically, trying to produce tears. We've shared your bed, Damien, over and over. The bride gasped, then turned back to Damien and slapped him hard across the face. You liar! Damien reeled back, holding his cheek, speechless. This is absurd, barked a booming voice from the front row. An older man with salt and pepper hair and a commanding presence stood up, fury in his eyes. Who is this woman, Damien? Cassie knew instinctively that this had to be Damien's father. He strode forward like a man used to controlling boardrooms and family legacies alike. Sir, Cassie said, voice wobbling but loud, I'm carrying your grandchild, and I won't be cast aside. There was a beat of silence. Then, you disgrace, the man growled, rounding on his son. You are the heir to Blackwood Holdings. You dare father a child out of wedlock and lie to your bride. The bride's father stood up now too, furious. An outrage. Chaos erupted. People shouted. Families argued. Somewhere, someone knocked over a vase of roses. Cassie tried to edge toward the door, but her phone buzzed again. Cassie, I'm so sorry. Leon's wedding is at 3 p.m. I gave you the wrong time. Please don't hate me. Her stomach dropped. Her vision spun. She had just destroyed the wrong wedding. And Damien Blackwood was definitely not Leon. Cassie bolted out of the church, her heart crashing against her ribcage, like it was trying to escape along with her. She didn't know where she was running. She just knew she had to get away from the screaming guests, the devastated bride, the furious fathers, and most of all, the man whose wedding she had just obliterated. Her lungs burned as she stumbled down the front steps, gripping her phone so hard it could have snapped in half. Evelyn's message echoed in her head like a cruel joke. Leon's wedding is at 3 p.m. I gave you the wrong time. Wrong church, wrong groom, wrong everything. Cassie reached the sidewalk and darted into a narrow alley between two buildings. She leaned against the brick wall, panting and trying to process the disaster she'd just caused. Her hand still rested on her stomach, an automatic reflex after screaming about a fake pregnancy. God, what had she done? Footsteps pounded behind her. Hey, stop, a voice yelled. Cassie turned in horror to see Damien, the groom, or rather, the ex-groom, chasing after her, his bow tie undone, and his expression a deadly mix of confusion and fury. Oh, hell no, she whispered, launching herself in the opposite direction. But Damien was faster. Before she could disappear around the corner, he stepped in front of her, effectively cutting off her escape. Cassie froze, breath hitching in her throat. Up close, he was even taller than she remembered. Broad shoulders, dark eyes still blazing with disbelief. Stop running, he ordered. Cassie held up both hands. Look, I'm really sorry. I swear, this is a huge misunderstanding. I wasn't supposed to be at your wedding. Damien blinked. Excuse me? I mean, I was, but not you. I was hired to stop a wedding, but it was the wrong one, I swear. Leon. I was supposed to stop someone named Leon. She paused. I'm not totally sure anymore. Damien stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language.
You said you were pregnant.
I know. I panicked. His brows drew together. You ruined my wedding. In front of hundreds of people. And you're telling me it was an accident? Yes, she said quickly. I'll explain everything. I'll even go back and tell them the truth. I'll fix it. Damien crossed his arms, a sardonic smile tugging at his lips. Fix it. You shouted that you were pregnant with my child. My father punched me in front of both families. The bride ran off crying. and now you want to fix it with a little speech. Cassie shrank back. I didn't mean for any of that to happen. Well, it did happen, he said sharply. Then, after a beat, you know what? Fine, be my wife. Her eyes widened. Excuse me? You said you're pregnant. You claimed me in front of everyone. So be my wife, he repeated. Let's make it real. Cassie laughed. Once, short and panicked. You're insane. No, I'm protecting myself. And frankly, you owe me. This was supposed to be a business marriage. Strategic, convenient. I didn't love her. But now, thanks to you, I'm humiliated. The only way I can fix this with my father is if we turn your lie into a reality. And fast. She shook her head. I'll pay you back. I'll do anything else. I'll clean your house. I'll scrub your toilets. I'll be your maid. None of that helps me now, he said coldly. My father believes you're pregnant. If you disappear, he'll track you down. And when he finds out it was a lie, he'll destroy you. Cassie paled. So what? You're going to keep me as a fake wife? Exactly. You'll stay in my house, pretend to be my wife, act like we're in love. You'll do it until my father believes it. And when the time's right, we'll quietly dissolve this arrangement. In return, I'll pay you $1 million. Enough to change your life. Deal. Cassie stared at him, torn between dread and disbelief. She was already in too deep. And maybe, just maybe, this was her only way out. Fine, she whispered. But I'm not kissing you again. Damien smirked. That part wasn't in the contract. But we'll see. Cassie stood stiffly in the grand foyer of the Blackwood estate, feeling like a piece of rusted metal dropped in a room made of glass and gold. The marble floors gleamed beneath her oil-stained boots, and crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead like something out of a royal palace. She held her tool bag like a shield, as though it could somehow protect her from the reality she'd just signed herself into. A fake marriage with a billionaire stranger, whose life she had flipped upside down. Damien walked ahead of her, his long strides purposeful, confident. He didn't look back to check if she was following, and Cassie wasn't sure if that was because he trusted her or because he just didn't care. Probably the latter. Mary, he called, voice echoing through the hall. Almost instantly, a woman appeared from a side corridor, dressed in a crisp gray uniform. She looked to be in her late 50s, warm-faced and sharp-eyed. Yes, sir, she said, folding her hands politely. This is Cassie, my wife, Damien said, without missing a beat. Mary's eyebrows lifted slightly, her eyes flickering to Cassie's clothes, her calloused hands, the grease on her jeans. Ah, she said simply. I want her settled in right away. She'll be staying in the West Wing. And Mary, Damien's tone dipped low, almost warning. You didn't hear a thing. Understand? Mary nodded. Understood, sir. Cassie blinked. That was it. No questions, no suspicion. Either Mary had seen stranger things, or this family was used to covering messes with quiet obedience. Mary turned to her with a smile. Follow me, ma'am. Cassie nearly corrected her. I'm not a mom, and I'm definitely not his wife, but bit her tongue. She followed the woman through lavish hallways lined with antique paintings and glistening vases. Her footsteps echoed as she tried not to gawk at the wealth screaming from every inch of this place. They finally arrived at a massive double door. Mary opened it to reveal a room bigger than Cassie's entire apartment. A 4-poster bed sat in the center, draped in white linen. There was a private balcony, a fireplace, and a walk. In closet that looked like it could house a small family. This will be your room, Mary said. If you need anything, just ring. Cassie stared, slack-jawed. I feel like I should take off my shoes. Mary chuckled softly. No need, ma'am. Once she was alone, Cassie sank onto the edge of the bed, dropping her bag to the floor. Her fingers curled around the soft comforter, and she let out a slow, shaky breath. What the hell have I gotten myself into? Meanwhile, down the hall, Damien stood in his private study, staring at the glass case that held a delicate silver bracelet. He opened the case and carefully picked it up, turning it over in his fingers with reverence. A simple charm dangled from it, etched with the letter L. His jaw tightened. "Where are you?" he whispered. "And why haven't you come back?" The bracelet wasn't just jewelry. It was a promise, a memory from a past he couldn't let go. A part of him still believed she would return one day, walk through the door, and explain everything. But life didn't work like that. Not anymore. And now there was Cassie Vaughn, grease-stained, sharp-tongued, impossible to predict. A fake wife. An intruder in his carefully curated world. Yet something about her unsettled him more, that something about her unsettled him more than he cared to admit. The next morning, Cassie was still wrapped in the plush blankets, her limbs tangled and warm, when a thunderous knock nearly shook her door off the hinges. Wake up." Mary's voice came through urgent. Cassie groaned. 5 more minutes. "Mr. Blackwood's father is here. Right now." That woke her faster than a double shot of espresso. She bolted upright, heart racing. "He's what?" Across the mansion, Damien's eyes snapped open at the exact same moment. He shot out of bed, muttering curses under his breath. Of all days, for him to drop in. He charged into Cassie's room seconds later, barefoot, shirtless, and barely awake. "What are you doing?" "Put on a shirt," she squeaked, clutching the blanket to her chest. He grinned through the panic. "We need to look convincing." Then, without warning, he scooped her into his arms. "Hey, you're not even wearing pants," she protested, squirming. "You're not wearing a bra," he shot back smugly. "This is harassment." "This is survival," he corrected, charging toward the stairs with a fake wife in his arms and a very real mess awaiting them below. Cassie clung to Damien's shoulders as he bounded down the stairs, each step making her chest bounce, just enough to make her glare at him through narrowed eyes. He was still shirtless, his skin warm under her arms, and the smugness in his expression made it clear he was enjoying this far more than she was. "Put me down," she hissed. "In a second," he replied calmly. "We have to sell the image, remember? My dad's got eyes sharper than a hawk." As they turned the corner, Mr. Henry Blackwood stood in the grand foyer with a wide smirk on his face and a glint of amusement in his eyes. Well, he said, watching them descend. "Looks like I caught you two, mid-celebration." Cassie wanted to vanish into thin air. She clutched the blanket tighter around herself, mortified. Damien gently set her down on her feet, and she immediately tightened the fabric around her chest. Mary, bless her, appeared from the hallway and handed her a robe discreetly. Cassie slipped it on in a hurry. "Good morning, Dad," Damien said, forcing a yawn into his voice. "You should have warned us you were coming so early. We barely had time to, get dressed." Henry Blackwood chuckled, utterly unbothered. "Clearly. But it's good to see you two so enthusiastic." Warms an old man's heart. He turned to Cassie, his expression softening. "Lexi, darling." "Cassie," she corrected before realizing what she'd done. Henry raised a brow, amused. "Cassie, then. My apologies. You're definitely heating things up with my son. At first, I wasn't sure he truly cared about you. But now, well, actions speak louder than words." Cassie offered a strained smile, caught somewhere between fake confidence and real embarrassment. "We're just very close, sir." "Well, I can see that," Henry said, giving Damien a knowing look. And I want to make sure my future grandchild is safe and well. So, I've hired a private doctor to oversee the pregnancy. Cassie froze. She could feel the blood drain from her face. Damien stepped forward so quickly it almost looked rehearsed. Actually, Dad, I already hired someone, he lied smoothly, arm wrapping around Cassie's waist as if that made it more believable. A discreet physician. Someone who'll keep everything private just like we want. Henry nodded approvingly. Good boy. Cassie, if my son ever gives you trouble, you come straight to me. I may be old, but I'll still knock some sense into him. Cassie laughed nervously. He's been wonderful, really. She placed a hand on Damien's chest for show, trying not to let it linger too long on the firm muscles beneath. Well, I expect a grandchild soon, Henry said cheerfully, already heading toward the door. And don't forget, 2 weeks from now, you're both attending the grand opening of our new hotel. I expect you to look the part of a loving, united couple. Of course, Damien said, wouldn't miss it. Once the door closed behind Henry, Cassie let out a breath she didn't know she was holding and turned to Damien with fire in her eyes. I swear, if you ever carry me around half naked again, you'll what? He teased, leaning casually against the staircase banister. I'll shove that $1 million deal somewhere you'll never find it, she snapped, tying her robe tighter. Damien smirked, his gaze lingering on her lips. Relax. We pulled it off. You kissed me, she blurted out suddenly. Back there, in front of him. We had to make it convincing, he replied, though his voice dropped slightly in pitch. Besides, Cassie flushed and looked away. You're impossible. Later that day, after a tense lunch and hours of mutual avoidance, Cassie lay awake on her side of the bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd placed a pillow fortress between them. Down on the floor, Damien tossed and turned. You okay down there? She finally asked. I've slept on worse, he said, though his voice sounded tight. Cassie bit her lip. Guilt tugged at her. Come sleep on the bed. I won't bite. You sure? Yes, but we're building a wall between us. Deal. He climbed up, settling on his side of the pillow barrier. Good night, Mr. Fake Husband. Good night, Mrs. Pretend Pregnant. They both fell quiet, the tension between them electric. Neither of them admitted it aloud. But that kiss earlier, it wasn't just for show. Not entirely. The room had fallen into a quiet stillness, the kind that crept in slowly and made everything feel too loud. Every breath, every rustle of the sheets, every unspoken thought that danced in the space between them. Cassie lay on her side of the bed, one arm tucked under her head, her back turned toward Damien. The oversized pillow wall she'd built between them earlier had slumped over slightly in the night, but she didn't dare reach across to fix it. She could feel his presence just inches away, his steady breathing, the faint rise and fall of the mattress as he shifted restlessly. It wasn't long before the silence was broken by a low groan from Damien. Ugh, what is that? Cassie stirred groggily, her eyelids fluttering open. Her leg was tangled in the blanket, and her arm hung loosely off the side of the bed. Then she felt something, warm and solid, beneath her hand. She blinked and looked down. Oh my! Her eyes went wide as she realized her fingers were curled firmly around Damien's most private territory. Is that your hand on my... He sat up halfway, his voice catching somewhere between horror and disbelief. Cassie let out a tiny squeak and yanked her hand back like she'd touched a live wire. I was asleep. I didn't know. I didn't mean to grab your... I was dreaming about... tools or something. Damien stared at her, eyes slightly wild, his hair tousled from sleep. Cassie, you were full, on cuddling my waist. She sat up, her face burning. I was not, was I? Oh God. Her hand flew to her forehead in sheer mortification. I swear, I didn't mean to violate your person. Damien let out a breathy laugh, shaking his head. You're terrified of sharing a bed with me, but your subconscious has no boundaries. It was an accident, she repeated, burying her face in her hands. I should sleep on the couch next time. Or maybe in the garage. But Damien wasn't looking at her with frustration. He was smiling now, oddly fond. He lay back down, adjusting the blanket, and tilted his head to look at her. You really don't remember any of it? No. God, please tell me I wasn't talking in my sleep, too. Well, he said, propping himself up on one elbow, you mumbled something about tightening bolts. Cassie groaned into her pillow. Kill me. Damien chuckled, but then, without meaning to, his eyes drifted to her face, soft in the moonlight, her lashes brushing her cheeks, her lips slightly parted. There was something fragile about her in that moment, something that didn't match the fiery mechanic who had stormed into his life. His gaze fell to her lips again. He didn't plan it. It just happened. He leaned in slowly, cautiously, almost as if testing himself. And then, with a feather-light touch, he kissed her, softly, soundlessly, just for a second. Her lips were warm, real. He pulled back instantly, guilt flooding him. What the hell am I doing? She's not yours. This is all fake. With a low groan, Damien rolled out of bed, grabbed his blanket and pillow, and stormed off into the bathroom. The cold shower blasted over his head, but it did nothing to cool the fire that had just sparked in his chest. Cassie, blissfully unaware, shifted in her sleep, her arms wrapping around the pillow wall again. But the warmth that had been next to her was gone. When morning finally came, Cassie awoke to a sharp sunlight cutting across the room. She stretched lazily, then turned over and froze. She was hugging something. Something warm. Something muscular. Damien. He was beside her, one arm slung around her waist, his face buried in her hair. She let out a scream and shoved him hard. You creep, pervert! What did you do while I was asleep? Damien jolted awake, groggy and confused. What the... Why are you screaming? You touched me. You were all over me all night, weren't you? What? No, he said, sitting up. You were the one who climbed over the pillow wall and spooned me. Liar, she gasped, yanking the sheets up to her chin. I would never. You even grabbed me again, he said, glaring at her. This time with more pressure. Cassie blushed so furiously she thought her face might combust. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean to. I'll compensate you or something. Damien smirked, leaning closer. Oh no. Sorry doesn't cover it, Cassie. You're gonna have to pay me back. Kiss for a kiss. What? No? But it was too late. His lips met hers again, hot, demanding, and far too familiar. And this time, she didn't stop it. Cassie sat on the edge of the grand canopy bed, still breathless, her lips tingling from the unexpected kiss. Damien had left the room moments ago, claiming he needed to take a walk to cool off, whatever that meant. She could still hear the echo of his voice in her ears, the feel of his hand at the nape of her neck, and, damn it, she could still feel her heart racing like she'd just run a mile in steel. Dude boots. This wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't real. They weren't anything. She wasn't supposed to feel a flutter in her chest every time he looked at her with that smug grin, or melt like butter every time his voice dipped into that dangerously low register. No, she was supposed to fake being his wife, take the money, and walk away when it was over. But things were starting to feel a little too real. Cassie tried to distract herself, wandering through the massive room like a caged animal. Eventually, her eyes landed on something on the far side of the dresser. An elegant glass box, the kind that held expensive jewelry. Curiosity got the better of her, and she approached it slowly. Inside was a simple, delicate bracelet, silver, worn, but well preserved. It didn't match anything else in the ultra-luxurious room. It didn't match anything else in the ultra-luxurious room. It looked sentimental. Her eyes narrowed on the small, heart-shaped charm attached to it, engraved with the initial L. L, she wondered, frowning. Not C. Not Cassie. She knew immediately that bracelet belonged to someone else. Someone important. Someone before her. She didn't hear Mary enter until the older woman cleared her throat softly behind her. Cassie jumped and spun around, nearly knocking the glass box off the dresser. "Didn't mean to startle you, ma'am," Mary said gently, folding her hands in front of her apron. "It's fine," Cassie replied, regaining her composure. "Sorry, I was just looking." Mary smiled knowingly. "It's a beautiful piece, isn't it?" Cassie nodded, unsure how to phrase what was already clawing at her chest. Mary stepped closer, her eyes soft with understanding. "Yes. That bracelet belonged to Miss Lana." Cassie's stomach sank. She'd never heard that name before. She wished she never had. "Miss Lana?" she asked slowly. "She and Mr. Damien were close once," Mary explained. "Very close. Childhood sweethearts. Grew up together, promised each other the world before life pulled them in different directions." Cassie swallowed hard. "And he still cares about her?" Mary tilted her head thoughtfully. "He's never said it out loud, but he never put that bracelet away. Not in all these years. 5 years, to be exact. I think a part of him has always been waiting for her to come back." Cassie stared down at the bracelet again, the metal glinting faintly in the light. It felt like a punch to the gut. She hadn't even realized how much she'd hoped. "Why didn't they end up together?" she asked, her voice quieter than before. "They were both heirs to powerful families," Mary said. "Obligations, expectations, ambitions. It all got in the way. Lana pursued her own path. She left the country, I believe. But Mr. Damien, he stayed, and he waited." Cassie felt the tears stinging at the backs of her eyes and turned away so Mary wouldn't see. She suddenly felt like a fool, like a cheap replacement for someone who'd left a permanent imprint on Damien's heart. "Are you all right, Mom?" Mary asked gently. Cassie wiped at her eyes quickly. "Yeah, just." "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you." "I think I just need some air," Cassie replied, brushing past her and exiting the room. She wandered out to the garden and sat on the stone bench tucked beneath a vine-draped archway. The sky was darkening with the early signs of sunset, and a soft wind curled around her shoulders. She stared at nothing, trying to convince herself that it didn't matter, that none of this mattered. She wasn't his real wife. She wasn't pregnant. She was just a placeholder in a plan that had gone horribly wrong. So why did her chest ache? Why did it feel like someone had carved out a piece of her and replaced it with something hollow? Because she wanted that kiss to mean something. Because she wanted to be the one he waited for, not some girl from 5 years ago with a bracelet and a perfect past. Pull it together, she whispered to herself, clutching her arms tightly. This isn't real. It's just business. But as the sun dipped lower and the wind grew colder, she realized that no matter how many times she told herself that it wasn't working. The grand ballroom of the newly built Blackwood Hotel shimmered with opulence. Polished marble floors, sweeping velvet curtains, and golden chandeliers casting warm light across a sea of perfectly tailored suits and glittering gowns. Cassie stood just inside the entrance, her fingers curled tightly around the clutch Damien had handed her earlier. She hated how stunning she looked in the champagne-colored silk dress, hated how natural it felt when Damien placed a hand on the small of her back to guide her through the crowd. Because none of this was real. They were only here to keep up the illusion, one perfectly curated performance for the elite of society. Smiles, small talk, the occasional hand-holding. All of it fake, all of it meaningless. At least that's what she tried to convince herself, until Mr. Henry Blackwood greeted them with an all-too-pleased grin. "There's my lovely daughter-in-law and my son," he announced proudly, waving them over. "Come, Cassie, I want you to meet someone very important to our family." Cassie forced a polite smile, the corners of her lips aching. She let herself be pulled forward, trailing behind Damien's confident steps as they approached a woman standing elegantly near the champagne fountain. Cassie's stomach twisted the moment she saw her. The woman had striking auburn hair swept into a low chignon, her green eyes sharp, intelligent, and already locked on Damien. She wore a dark green gown that complemented every curve and sparkled like emeralds beneath the lights. "Cassie," Mr. Blackwood said warmly, "meet Lana Moore. She's practically family." Cassie's throat closed. "Lana." "Of course." The woman smiled gracefully and extended a hand. "It's so nice to meet you, Cassie. I hear you're Damien's wife." Cassie shook her hand with carefully masked stiffness. "That's right. Seeing you both standing here, I can tell it's true," Lana said, though her eyes never left Damien's. "You're married. No question about it." Cassie felt the strain behind her smile deepen. "When did you get back?" Damien asked, his voice lower, cautious. "I've been back for a week," Lana replied, as if she'd been waiting for him to ask. "I wanted to surprise you. And, well, surprise." She laughed softly, her voice smooth as silk. Cassie watched the exchange like a third wheel crashing an old love story. She could see the glances between them, how Lana tilted her head just enough to mirror Damien's posture, how Damien didn't blink when he looked at her. There was something unspoken there, something ancient. And Cassie felt like a page that didn't belong in their book. "Well," Mr. Blackwood said, clapping his hands, "I'll leave you kids to catch up. Cassie, Lana, get to know each other." As he walked away, Cassie shifted her weight uncomfortably.
"So," Lana said, folding her arms, "Damien didn't tell you about me."
Cassie shook her head. Someone else did. "Interesting," Lana murmured, her eyes narrowing. "We were close, you know. Promised to marry each other once. He used to cry every time I left." She laughed again, softer this time, like it wasn't quite a joke. Cassie's chest tightened. "That's sweet." "You don't have to pretend you're not hurt," Lana said. Voice gentler now. "I've been where you are. And I can tell there's more to this marriage than meets the eye." Cassie stiffened.
What's that suppose?
"Only that you shouldn't let old ghosts haunt what you're trying to build." Lana touched her arm lightly. "If it's real, make sure he knows. If it's not, don't let it eat you alive." Cassie nodded tightly, the emotion clawing at her throat, threatening to spill. "Excuse me. I need a moment." She slipped out into the garden, the cold air biting into her skin. Her heels clicked against the stone path until she found a secluded corner beneath the archway of climbing roses. And there, finally alone, she let the tears fall. She had promised herself not to get hurt, not to care. But standing there in that ballroom, watching Damien and Lana speak with eyes that still remembered each other, she'd felt like nothing more than a shadow. She cried until her chest ached and her eyes stung. And when she finally wiped her face clean, she turned back toward the ballroom, only to freeze. Across the patio, under the soft golden lights, stood Damien and Lana, locked in a quiet, lingering embrace. Cassie's heart broke again in silence. This time, she didn't wait for explanations. She turned and ran into the night, each step echoing like the closing of a door she had barely dared to open. Cassie sat in the back seat of the taxi, staring blankly out the window as the city blurred past in streaks of neon and moonlight. The night air outside was crisp, but inside her chest it felt like ice. She replayed the image again and again. Damien holding Lana, his arms around her like a memory too familiar to let go. She hadn't waited to see if they kissed. She hadn't waited to see if they kissed. She didn't need to. The softness in his eyes was enough. When she arrived back at the mansion, everything felt hollow. She walked straight through the front door, up the grand staircase, and into the bedroom without a word. Damien wasn't home. Typical. Probably still with her. The silence in the room mocked her. It had once been unbearable because she'd felt like a stranger in a palace. But now, it was unbearable because she missed his voice, even when it was teasing, irritating, or infuriating. She missed him, and that made everything worse. The next morning, Cassie wandered the halls in a daze. Damien still hadn't returned. She told herself she didn't care, that she wouldn't ask, that he could stay gone for all she cared. But when she saw him stepping out the front door later that afternoon, dressed sharp in a tailored coat and moving with purpose, the question escaped before she could stop herself. "Where are you going?" He paused, surprised she spoke. "Business," he said flatly. She nodded once, forcing indifference into her expression. "Be careful." His eyes lingered on her, as if he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He just turned and left. Cassie stood frozen in the foyer for a few seconds before pulling out her phone. "Bianca," she said into the call. "Wanna go out tonight?" "You sound like you need a drink," Bianca replied without missing a beat. More like 5. By 10, they were at one of the city's busiest clubs, music pulsing through the walls, lights flashing like a kaleidoscope of chaos. Cassie downed her second cocktail and laughed at something Bianca said, even though she didn't hear it. The only thing she wanted was to stop thinking. "Wow, married life suits you," Bianca teased as they danced. "But I'm starting to think you're not really married." Cassie shrugged. "I'm not. It's just complicated." Bianca raised an eyebrow. "Girl, I don't know what kind of complicated requires fake marriage and diamonds that big. But if you're heartbroken, you picked the wrong way to cope." Cassie didn't reply. She just grabbed another drink and made her way back to the dance floor, letting the music drown everything else out. But her escape was short-lived. "Cassie." She turned, drink in hand, to find Damien standing behind her, dressed in black, his jaw clenched. Her heart leapt, then sank. Behind him, she spotted Lana at the bar, sipping a glass of wine and watching them with interest. "Oh, look," Cassie said, flashing a bitter smile. "The man of the hour. Shouldn't you be busy reminiscing with your soulmate?" "What the hell are you doing here?" Damien asked, voice low but sharp. "Dancing, drinking, being a free woman." She raised her glass to him and took a long sip. He stepped closer. Shouldn't be here like this. And you shouldn't be with her, Cassie snapped. But here we are, disappointing each other equally. At that moment, a tall stranger approached Cassie with a grin. You're wild, miss. Can I have you tonight? She looked up at the stranger, then back at Damien. And with reckless spite pulsing through her, she grabbed the man's shirt and kissed him. It wasn't tender. It wasn't romantic. It was a statement. Damien yanked her back so fast she nearly dropped her drink. Hands off my wife, he growled, shoving the man aside. The guy pushed back. What's your problem, man? She's my wife, Damien snarled. The man threw a punch. Bad idea. Damien moved first, knocking him flat with a clean right hook. Cassie blinked, stunned. Are you crazy? Damien didn't answer. He grabbed her wrist. We're going home. I'm not going anywhere with you. Yes, you are, he snapped, dragging her toward the exit. The night, once meant to numb her pain, had erupted into chaos. And somehow, it was only the beginning. Cassie slammed the car door the moment they reached the mansion, her heels clicking furiously against the stone driveway as she marched toward the front steps. Damien was right behind her, his jaw tight, his breaths coming fast with restrained anger. You can't just drag me out of a club like some kind of caveman, she snapped, spinning to face him halfway up the stairs. And you can't go around kissing strangers while pretending to be my wife, he shot back, eyes blazing. Oh, I'm sorry, she said sarcastically, throwing her hand in the air. Did I ruin your night with Lana? You two looked cozy back there. Why didn't you just stay with her? Damien took the steps two at a time and towered over her, chest heaving. You think I wanted to be there with her? I was trying to explain things. Trying to figure out how to talk to you. Cassie scoffed. Oh, really? And what exactly were you going to say? Hey, fake wife. Sorry, I've been emotionally unavailable and disappeared for hours at a time to spend them with the woman I actually love. Damien didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. Enough. We're talking about this. Now. He dragged her all the way to their bedroom and shut the door behind them with a loud thud. Cassie stood frozen for a second as he walked over to the bed, ripping off his jacket and tossing it aside. What are you doing? She asked, voice edged with disbelief. What does it look like I'm doing? He snapped, unbuttoning his shirt. Cassie's eyes widened.
Seriously, now you're undressing?
Damien stepped forward, shirt hanging open, revealing the hard lines of his chest. I'm claiming what's mine, he growled. Excuse me, she barked, backing up until her calves hit the bed frame. You had no problem letting that guy put his lips on you, he said, stalking closer. But you flinch every time I touch you. You act like I'm the one using you when you're the one who walked into my life, blew it up, and made me fall in love with someone I'm not supposed to want. Cassie stared at him, heart pounding. You love me? Yes, damn it, he roared. I don't know when or how it happened. Maybe it was when you yelled at my father without fear. Maybe it was when you offered to sleep on the floor instead of sharing the bed. Or maybe it was tonight, when I saw some stranger touching you and realized I'd rather lose everything than watch you slip away. Cassie opened her mouth, but no words came out. But you, he continued, stepping even closer, you won't even let me explain. You assume. You assume. You run, and then you punish me for trying to figure this out. I've been punishing myself, Cassie finally whispered. Do you know what it feels like to fall for someone who still holds a torch for someone else? I thought I was just a placeholder, a prop. You said this was a business deal, Damien, that it would end when you found the one you wanted. So I didn't let myself hope. He reached for her hand, gripping it gently. There's no one else. Not anymore. Lana's in the past. You're the one in front of me. And if I'm being honest, you've always been the one who made everything real." Her chest tightened, her throat thick with emotion. "Then prove it." He didn't wait. He kissed her. Hard, fierce, desperate. His lips pressed into hers like he was sealing a promise he couldn't say out loud. She responded before she could think, her fingers curling into his hair, her body melting against his. The kiss deepened, and the room spun. Their breaths grew ragged as clothes were shed, one layer at a time, until there was nothing left between them. No walls, no secrets, no pretense. For the first time since the lie began, they weren't acting. That night, in the heart of the mansion, under the heavy warmth of the covers, Cassie and Damien made love, not as a fake husband and wife, but as two people finally surrendering to what they had denied for too long. And by morning, everything would be different. Sunlight filtered softly through the sheer curtains, casting a golden hue across the room. Cassie stirred, tangled in silk sheets that still held the warmth of the night before. Her body ached in the sweetest way, her skin still tingled with the memory of Damien's hands, his lips, the way he had whispered her name, like a vow in the dark. For a moment, she let herself believe everything was perfect, that she had woken up beside someone who loved her fully, without hesitation, without ghosts haunting the space between them. But reality crept in like a shadow. The space next to her was empty. Cassie sat up slowly, brushing her hair from her face. She reached for the robe draped over the armchair and slipped it on, heart sinking. Damien was gone. No note, no trace. Only the lingering scent of his cologne on the pillow. The bedroom door creaked open. But instead of Damien, Mr. Henry Blackwood stepped inside, followed by none other than Lana Moore. Cassie's breath caught in her throat. Henry's eyes widened slightly as he took in the disheveled sheets and Cassie's tousled appearance. "Well," he said with a raised brow, "it seems I've interrupted something." Sorry," Cassie stammered. I tried to stop them," came Damien's voice from the hallway, a note of frustration in his tone as he joined them. "Lana called my father last night. Said she was worried about you." Cassie looked from Damien to Lana, confusion and humiliation knotting in her stomach. "We didn't mean to intrude," Lana said gently, stepping forward. "But..." Cassie stood frozen, heart pounding. "Alone," Lana added, glancing at the men. Damien hesitated, but Cassie nodded faintly. "It's okay." The two men left, closing the door behind them. Cassie turned to Lana, wrapping the robe tighter around herself. "If this is about last night..." "No," Lana interrupted softly. "It's not. I actually came to apologize." Cassie blinked. "Apologize?" Lana nodded. "I thought I still had a place in Damien's heart. I guess part of me wanted to believe we could just pick up where we left off. But last night, after seeing how he looks at you, how he talks about you, I realized I was holding on to something that's already gone." Cassie didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you didn't belong," Lana continued. "You do. And whatever your history with Damien started as, I know now that what you two have is real." Cassie's throat tightened. She nodded once, the lump in her chest pressing upward. Lana smiled faintly. "I'd like us to be friends, if you're willing." Cassie reached out and shook her hand. "I'd like that." When they went downstairs, Damien was waiting by the grand piano, pacing. He looked up the moment he saw her and walked over. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Cassie nodded. We talked. It's fine now. He exhaled, clearly relieved. There's something I need to say, he added, and I need you to really listen. Cassie looked into his eyes, the intensity in them enough to make her knees wobble. I'm sorry, he said, for everything, for not making things clear, for letting you believe that Lana was still in the picture, for shutting down when you needed answers. He paused. But most of all, I'm sorry for making you doubt how I feel. Cassie swallowed hard, her eyes glossy. I love you, Damien said, pulling her gently into his arms. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that. I don't want this to be a fake marriage anymore. I don't want this to be a fake marriage anymore. I want it to be real. For us, for whatever comes next. Cassie closed her eyes against his chest, breathing in the steadiness of him, the truth in his heartbeat. I love you too, she whispered. And I want this. I want you. Their lips met again, not with desperation this time, but with the certainty of two people who had weathered the storm and were finally ready to claim each other without fear. Whatever had begun as a lie had somehow grown into something undeniable, and neither of them was ready to let it go. 2 weeks later, the sky over the city gleamed with a warm golden hue, and the Blackwood Hotel stood lit like a jewel against the evening skyline. It was the grand opening, an event the press had dubbed the most anticipated social gathering of the season. Guests in gowns and tuxedos filled the lobby, champagne flowed like water, and flashes from cameras painted the walls in bursts of white light. But none of it mattered to Cassie as she stepped out of the car with Damien at her side, his hand tightly wrapped around hers. For once, she wasn't just pretending to be his wife. She was his wife, truly and wholly, not by accident, not because of a contract, not because of a lie, but because of love that had grown between them, strange and unexpected, and stronger than either had imagined. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Mr. Blackwood, beaming with pride, introduced Cassie to everyone as his daughter-in-law without hesitation. Lana was there too, looking radiant, but at peace. She gave Cassie a subtle nod across the ballroom, a quiet gesture of solidarity that said, "This is your story now." As the night unfolded, Damien stole her away from the crowd and led her to the rooftop garden of the hotel, where the city lights twinkled like stars. The wind brushed her hair back as she leaned against the railing beside him. "Remember when I first asked you to be my wife?" he said, smirking. Cassie chuckled. "You mean when you practically blackmailed me into it?" Damien grinned. Details. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "But I want to ask again. Properly, this time." Cassie's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, unmistakably real. He dropped to one knee, not caring that the city roared behind them, or that the world was watching somewhere just out of sight. "Cassie Vaughn, will you marry me for real? No lies, no act, no $1,000,000 deal. Just you and me. Just love." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, smiling through the sting of happy disbelief. Yes, of course, yes. They kissed again, sealing it, not as actors in a farce, but as two people who had stumbled into something honest through a web of mistakes. A month later, they stood in the same cathedral, where Cassie had once shouted her infamous objection. Only this time, she wore a real white gown, and Damien waited at the altar with a smile that made her heart flutter. The ceremony was beautiful, intimate, heartfelt. As Cassie walked down the aisle, she met the eyes of every person who had once doubted her, who thought she was nothing more than a scandal or a stand-in. And she held her head high, because she wasn't pretending anymore. She was his, and he was hers. And when the priest asked if anyone objected, a chuckle ran through the room. but no one said a word. Their vows were short but meaningful. "I thought I came into your life by mistake," Cassie said, "but now I believe fate knew exactly what it was doing." Damien squeezed her hands. "I thought I was in control of everything, until you came in like a storm and showed me how to feel again." They kissed under a sky filled with confetti and cheers. This time, there were no secrets, no scripts, just truth, just love. Weeks turned into months. The Blackwood mansion felt less like a museum and more like a home. Cassie returned to fixing things, though now it was more classic cars than rusty sedans. Damien took to calling her boss in the garage, especially when she had grease on her face and fire in her eyes. One morning, she found herself staring at a little white stick in her hand. Her heart raced. She'd taken the test 3 times, just to be sure. Positive. She stood in the bathroom with trembling fingers, eyes wide, stunned into silence. When she finally broke the news to Damien, he dropped the coffee mug in his hand and gaped at her. "Wait, really?" Cassie nodded, tears in her eyes. "You're going to be a dad." He pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying all at once. They both laughed, holding each other tightly, the echo of a joke long gone becoming the foundation of a new future. Because sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And this time, everything was real. Life lesson from Cassie and Damien's story. Cassie and Damien's journey began with chaos, built on lies, misunderstandings, and a mountain of emotional walls. But through that mess, through the heartache, jealousy, and moments of doubt, they found something real. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Love doesn't have to start perfectly to be genuine. Sometimes it grows in the most unexpected places, between 2 broken people trying to protect themselves. Cassie didn't believe she deserved love, and Damien wasn't sure he could give it. But through honesty, vulnerability, and forgiveness, they learned that real relationships aren't built on flawless beginnings. They're built on effort, growth, and mutual choice. Another important takeaway: never let assumptions speak louder than communication. So much pain between them could have been avoided if they'd just listened to each other sooner. In love, pride has no place. Only courage to be seen and understood. And finally, don't judge your worth based on someone's past. Cassie thought she'd never measure up to the woman who came before her, but she learned that what's real doesn't need comparison. You are enough, as you are. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you smile even for a second, let us know in the comments. What part resonated with you the most? And hey, where are you watching from? Tell us your city or country. We'd love to know how far our stories are traveling. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next romantic journey. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and always believe in second chances.